Welcome, Roots family, to another episode of the Roots Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sean Pitcher. We are very fortunate to have Kate Callaway on. She is the Director of Performance Nutrition for the Carolina Panthers. I have known Kate all the way back since 2018 when I was a graduate assistant there at Ole Miss, where she was the Director of Football Nutrition. So really excited to bring her on. She has a lot of experience on the football side in the SEC and then also in the NFL. So that's one of those main topics that we're definitely going to dive into today. But welcome, Kate.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talking to you.
So, question I start with every single person. Can you please tell us who is Kate? What is your roots?
Oh, I love that question. Depends on the day sometimes, right? But um, I really obviously love sports. I think most people can say if they didn't, they wouldn't be doing what we do in this field. But yeah, I mean, I grew up with two brothers, and so naturally was exposed to sports through their ventures and athleticism. So I kind of, joined right in, and tried to play sports myself growing up. Grew up in a sports family, like a coaching family. So it was always just part of my experience and part of my life to be around this type of environment. So that's definitely molded who I am and how, like, especially professionally. But also, aside from that, I've always just really enjoyed health and feeling good and taking care of myself and cooking, and like I love art and yoga and all kinds of different stuff. But it's been fun. I think, like, for me personally, as I've gotten older and like come along more professionally and personally, it's fun to like not compartmentalize necessarily like work and life. I mean, sometimes you have to do some of that, right? But anyway, so just kind of being able to like be a sports dietitian, and I absolutely love yoga, practice yoga a lot. I really enjoy trying new things. So I'm like, sometimes I'm more into lifting than others. I used to run a lot. I used to cook a lot. Now I'm more like ordering out, but just embracing this phase of life where I am now, and enjoying what comes. And yeah, I love new experiences. I like to be outside. I have two doggies. I meant to ask you about your doggies. I don't know if you have more than one now.
I do. I just have one dog, Riggs.
Yeah,
He's about
yeah.
6 years old. He's over here passed out on the
That's
couch right
sweet.
now.
Yeah, as they should be, right? I saw some pictures on like my memories the other day of him when we had him stay in Oxford, and I was like, oh, I bet he's so big now. He's so sweet.
Yes, he's gotten
But
huge.
oh, I bet. Yeah. But you want to get me off topic real quick. I know I'm the one that brought it up. I'm like, I absolutely love dogs and animals. So um kind of a random mix of things about me, but that's the start maybe.
You're keeping life interesting, and that's
Yeah, that's
that's
true.
awesome. As long as you're enjoying yourself and what you're doing, like that, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And you mentioned yoga. I don't know if many people know this about you. Obviously, when I first got to Ole Miss, you were implementing or providing opportunities for some of the athletes, even some of the coaching staff, to get
Yeah.
themselves involved in yoga. And I most
Yeah.
recently got really involved in yoga during
Yeah.
COVID in
Sweet.
like 2020. So I do
Mhm.
yoga every day now, at least 10 to 20
Nice.
minutes.
Yeah.
Whether it's I start my day with it or I end my day at night. Just the benefits it has from a flexibility and mobility, the breathing aspect, especially to relax me and kind of get me into that parasympathetic state, definitely has a lot of benefits there. But from your
Mhm.
perspective, like what got you into starting yoga, and why do you feel it's an important thing that athletes should try to incorporate?
Um, I started yoga. I think I was yeah, like right around grad school. I had tried it before, like in college and stuff, but I think I just was always like saw my like working out and the way like doing anything physical is like something had to be a really hard workout. And that's I don't necessarily believe that anymore. So that's maybe a story for a separate story, but or conversation. But I had a neighbor, and when I was in grad school at Auburn, that was a yoga teacher, and I was like, oh, she's really cool. So I started going to her yoga classes, and I think it was like a good fit and timing for me, like what I didn't know I needed at the time, because it was like pretty physically challenging classes, but still had that like the obviously the breath work. And to me, and there's so many different types of yoga and different experiences with yoga, but what I've come to kind of feel like a complete yoga class, in the sense is, you have the physical, the efforting, the asana, you call it, and then the breath work, and then the kind of the introspective part. So she did such a nice job of blending those together, I think, at a time that just spoke to me really well in the way that she taught. And I mean, I started practicing almost every day at that point too. And so, yeah, I just realized the benefits of it. And I think, like, to your point, the breath work and the relaxation, I felt it was really helpful for reducing anxiety. And I didn't even know that was coming from it. I didn't know that was going to be a benefit. And now I really feel like it helps me, like you, to practice regularly. And I think for athletes, the benefit is definitely there. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be yoga. Like, we know stretching in general is helpful, but I think where athletes, because athletes can get stretching on their own without yoga. You can even do breath work on your own without necessarily calling it yoga. But I think that just the blend of, like I said, the stretching and physical aspects, plus paying attention to your breath, and like the practice of like developing your intuition, I think, is like the lock and key, like that completes the puzzle, I guess, if you will. Like, that's the aspect that we're not necessarily teaching in practice. Or, I mean, and I've seen some coaches, non-yoga situations where that does come into play. And I think, wow, that's really cool. But anyway, that's where I think yoga can be really helpful, and a way of practice of this, being able to set aside, because athletes and sports practitioners and anyone out there in the world can probably relate to just like the need to sometimes decompress and set aside what's going on in here. Right. And I think that's where a lot of the benefits can come into play.
Even in the moment, we're
Yeah.
working IMG Academy with leadership coaches, mental conditioning, our athletic trainers, like, and myself, right? All four of us recommended it, even though it's like not, let's say, a mainstay of our specific profession. Like, we've
Yeah.
seen the impact it has in each of our different disciplines. Or our leadership coach, what he would do is he would do like a 2 to 3, he'd have athletes come in, he'd say, rate your energy 1 through 10. They'd write down on a piece of paper. He'd then have them do like a breathing exercise or breathing work, shut the lights off, do it for like 2-3 minutes. And then he would say, okay, I want you to re-rate your energy level.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I would say 80 to 90% of the time, their energy level went up like 2 or 3 points. Just taking
Yeah.
a couple of minutes to get off your phones, redirect your thoughts, do something that was a lot more calming. And then when they were able to go into the workshop session, it was a much more effective, because the athletes were a lot more locked in and to be able to pay attention and on track with whatever he was going to specifically have that day.
That's awesome.
Or in game, right? Like, you see
Yeah.
from a mental conditioning standpoint, an athlete's getting upset, or a bad play happen, or the game's not going the way they want to, taking those moments and just focus on your breathing, closing your eyes, doing some quick visualization. A lot of that different stuff can kind of recenter you to hopefully get back into the game, so that
Yeah.
one player, that one issue doesn't derail you for the whole rest of the game.
Right. Exactly. And that's huge. That's what, like, or I hear a lot of coaches say that, like, it's not your ability or lack of mistakes. It's your ability to come back to the moment and to the game when you make a mistake. So I think that totally resonates, and like where yoga can help you practice that, because it is a practice. I used to always think, well, I'm just naturally anxious. I'm just going to be kind of an anxious person, or I'm going to be a worrier. And that's true, but it doesn't mean I can't bring in this tool of practicing, like, dissociating from that at times. Or, I guess sometimes anxiety and worry can be productive in a sense, if they don't become counterproductive from being too much. But yeah, it's just like not putting a label on yourself of like, this is what I am and what I do. Like, maybe sometimes this is how you respond to things, but here's where yoga can help you respond differently, or breathing or mindfulness or whatever aspect of yoga you're practicing can help you, be differently in a situation, or be different, respond differently, pause before you respond.
Everyone can look at anxiousness and nervousness and all those things as a negative, typically in the mainstream, but like there's always a plus and minus behind it, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're a little bit anxious, but it gives you some sense of urgency, making sure you're getting stuff done, making sure the players what they need, like there's a positive side of that. But Obviously, if it gets to a certain extent where it's affected you negatively and you can't do your job and you're stuck and you're in this rut, then that's obviously a whole different scenario. But that's
Yeah.
one of those ebbs and flows come into play, and that's where we can introduce some of these tools and hopefully allow us to be able to sustain and
Mhm.
do what we need to do so it doesn't impact us like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's fun. It's fun to
So,
watch people to get into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So SEC, NFL, if we look at it from a feeling perspective or just working with those two very large entities, especially on the
Hmm.
football side, from your experience in both,
Hmm.
what do you see as the significant differences after transitioning now to the level that you're at versus where you were?
Um, for sure, the range or like variety, if you will, of like athlete ability, maturity, like their routines, just kind of the way they operate around their sport and manage themselves, as people and as athletes. I mean, you definitely see that. Like, that's part of life, right? That's what makes the world go round, is everybody's different and there's variety especially when you have big groups of people together. Um, but I think, like, most of the time in college, it's 18 to 22, maybe, sometimes give or take. But um, I think I starting to learn not to take so much for granted. Like in the NFL, we've got guys who are 22, maybe 21, sometimes usually young, say like 22, 23, to all the way to like 34. We have a player on our team that's 37, 36, 37. And it's like just the difference in what you have in the building, just the range of differences is it's really cool. And it's cool to see how a team comes together with all of the different people and experiences and mindsets and stuff in the building come together, for one cause, which again totally happens in college football and the SEC as well. But I'm like, oh, like I got some of the guys on the team, there's a lot of guys on the team that have been in the league longer than me. So I'm like, you tell me what works for you. I'm going to try to support it. And so, when you're working with people, always a fan of the individualized approach to like what I hope would be the best approach for this person and the way we talk to each other and the way I give them information or education. But I definitely find here there's more variety in that. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And like the level of commitment it takes, like I always have thought, I mean, no matter what, if you're an athlete that's dedicated to your sport or just playing any sport, like it takes a huge commitment. And we all see that. And in college, it takes a huge commitment because you have to be an athlete. And if you want to do that, then you also have to do classes and like all these other responsibilities and expectations that are set out, like community involvement and, philanthropic things, like things for your university that you may be representative of. Like there's so much. I personally wasn't a college athlete, but I feel like that would just be, I'm so impressed and amazed with college athletes and all that they do by being college athletes. And again, I just don't think I knew what to expect in terms of like the level of commitment that some of the NFL players have and have to be successful at their sport. Because, I mean, you probably hear this like all the time, like it's the best of the best. Like it is the best of the best people competing against each other. So they have to do everything to gain the competitive advantage that they can. Because, even being exposed to sports for a while and kind of thinking I sort of understand this world, it's like, I guess I kind of assumed like, oh, I'm going into like a group of people that's all really good at what they do. So they're probably just going to be good at what they do. But on the flip side of that, it makes them more competitive and more like they're always searching for ways to get better. And we have some guys that are like to go back to the college comparison. I'm like, oh, unfortunately with the college schedule, a lot of times it's like you got to be training at 6 a.m. so you can make classes at 8 or 9, and then you have homework at night. And it's like, oh, I can't imagine that schedule. And then now we have guys that do that at their own will. Like
You could train in the
you know,
morning, you could train in the afternoon, and
yeah,
like it's kind of up to you to a certain extent.
Yeah. And that's what I think. Oh, their schedules might be a little more, not lax, if you will, but like they're going to,
Flexible.
yeah, more flexible. That's a perfect word. And I'm like, even though a lot of them, I guess, technically have that option, like we've got a whole lot of guys that still work from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. At
They're just
will,
used to that regimen probably too,
Yeah.
especially coming straight from college.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally a good point. Yeah, it's just kind of becomes part of who they are. So that's been
Does the,
fun. It's cool.
does the fueling change at all? Like and I know when you come from especially a really large SEC school,
Mhm.
typically a lot of schools now have a training table. I know
Yeah.
a lot of NFL facilities, depending on where you're at, possibly have a training table slash chefs on board.
Hmm.
Um, do you see more athletes utilizing the services you have in house, or are they
Hmm.
typically trying to find a chef outside of that? Do they do a
Hmm.
combination or hybrid of both?
I honestly think it's both because I've noticed in general, like the guys who have figured out their routine and I feel like are kind of like in their flow, if you will, of like being an NFL player, are they know how to take advantage of the resources in the building, like to their benefit, right? In a good way. Like we've got these meals in house. We're gonna eat because like sometimes, as we know, as dietitians and a lot of athletes and folks out there know, like I love to eat for pleasure. That's my preference. But sometimes it's like eating for function. And thankfully we have a great chef in our building, which allows us to enjoy our food. But even still, it's like we practice kind of midday. So it's like sometimes eating lunch isn't appealing to the athletes, but they know they have to do it. So they're committed to that and they figure out a way to just make it work. Like even if they're eating a turkey sandwich every day for lunch, like they're like, you know what, I got to do it. Like for me personally, I'm like, oh, I want to eat something different, and I would get tired of that. And they may sometimes feel that way too, but they know that if they don't, it's going to impact their routine and the way they feel. So there's that, like, um, you know, utilizing the resources in the building. And a lot of guys are just, it's just their life is so much easier if they have a private chef to work with, because they want to be able to just stay late, watch film, not worry about going home to cook. Some of them, if they have families, or people at home that will help support their meals at home, that's great. And there's a lot of guys who are single and they don't necessarily want to spend their time doing that and they don't have somebody to do it. So they'll hire the private chef. So you see both. And I think the key is it's like I've tried to get in the routine or the habit of telling guys when they ask about private chef recommendations or like what to eat outside of the building, it's really like what works for you. Like sometimes like thankfully there's a lot of if healthy restaurants out there these days. Like sometimes DoorDash is the best option. Like I know that may not be what they think. They're like, they feel like they need to do something extra special, and it may not be feel special to them, but it's routine that they need to commit to. So
You got to start
so
at a
you see
basic
both.
level. Like, can you actually
Yeah,
get all the amount of food that you need in during the day? And it's like
exactly.
if we can do that, okay, now let's talk about a possible direction or plan that we can guide you.
Yeah.
It's going to work in your schedule and routine that actually makes sense. Hey, you want to choose higher quality options? These are the better restaurants. Hey, you don't want to do
Hmm.
any of that. You just come home and tell the chef to be here and have this meal ready for me and my family this
Hmm.
time. Boom, we're going to do that. It's like
Yeah.
I can't tell you which one's going to work for you because
Right.
you're the one that knows you and how your environment
Exactly.
works at home.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it's like I was actually talking to one of our athletes. It's nice too, because like a lot of times athletes will be willing to connect me with the chef so we can handle here's the nutritional requirements and here's how the chef wants to execute it. So that's cool to be able to work with that discipline outside of like, training table level. But it's like how much as the athlete do they want to take on in terms of getting this done. So, and we'll help however we can, but I think overall it's like the commitment to making sure they find a routine is like you said, the first part. Like you just got to get the calories in at some point. The quality does matter, but if we're not getting the quantity, especially at this type of sport and other sports that require such high calorie intake, then
If you're
and
under
all
fueling and
sports.
you
Yeah.
got 2 to 4 hours of training a day, good luck.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
your
You're not
injury
making
risk
it.
and illness risk is just going to go through the roof. And
Oh yeah.
when that's already high as is, like there's not a
Hmm.
lot of wiggle room in between there.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So you mentioned you obviously work with a large age group too, 22,
Yeah.
23, all the way up to 37. Have you found communication has changed over time? Especially now with texting and FaceTiming and all those different
Hmm.
things. Has it been easier? Has it been harder communicating maybe with some of these younger athletes, but in
Hmm.
comparison to maybe some of the more seasoned veterans?
I would say honestly, as much as I think it's honestly a little, well, the tools we have for communication make it a lot easier. I, as one that's getting further away from the athlete age myself, I'm like, I just have to try to stay in touch with how to communicate with certain athletes. But once I like know what their preference is, they'd rather not text, they'd rather wait to talk in person, or some guys I'm never going to catch them in person, they just want to text, it's what they prefer, and then they have it to reference, so it's a little bit of both, but I would say the text definitely makes it easier, like text and FaceTime even, because how many times, Sean, have you like gotten a FaceTime from somebody at the grocery store and you can
Oh
help
yeah,
them
out
a
of
lot
nowhere.
easier, it's like, oh,
Is this
okay,
good to eat? Should I buy this?
yeah,
All right,
yeah,
I better take this moment because they may not ever call me like this again. So if I don't take advantage of it, like you never know if they're going to trust me to call me again like that.
yeah, exactly. And different than, I mean, like I'm like way back in the day when we didn't even have text, you miss a phone call, it's kind of too bad. But now it's like, okay, even if I can't answer this right now, I can text them back right away and be like, give me 5 minutes, or I'm so sorry I can't talk, but like, can we text or whatever? It just, that immediate ability to immediately respond is crucial in our world for sure. And it is fun to watch. Like I just, it's funny, like older guys make fun of the younger guys and the way they're always on their phones and vice versa. It's just like they make the most of the differences, I think, at least from this building, like this team we have, I've gotten to see that. It's fun.
And that was something I started to do as well, like in my one-on-one or individual assessments. Just how do you like to communicate? Like
Yeah.
how do you want me to present information for you? How do you want me to send stuff to you? Like in
Hmm.
person, FaceTime, phone call, because again, when you're able to do that and meet them at where they are with their communication, it definitely makes those initial steps to building that relationship and that trust a lot better.
Yeah,
It's like you're a text guy, but then I come approach you face to face, and you're like, oh, like I don't like you coming to me face to face,
totally.
and you don't know that up front. Like that may be a challenge, and then they may be kind of like thrown off by it, or like I don't like how he or she approaches me.
Right. And that matters for the rest of your communications, like I think that's such a good point. And it's crucial because you might have one or two tries where you like get their ear, and if you maybe overdo one type of communication, then you might have missed the window. But that's such a good point. Like, how do you want to do this? And some guys, I'm like, do you like, I like to, like if I'm working on a meal plan, for example, or like working on something that requires a little bit of legwork, like I want to do some homework, but I have some on this for you, but I have some initial questions that'll make that more efficient. Can we talk for 5 minutes now and then maybe 15 or 20 minutes later? Or would you rather just me like do what I do and then talk to you when I'm done and see how it goes? So, because again, like some guys do want to be more engaged with the process and some don't. So, um,
Yeah, you almost have to
matters.
take a little bit of info from like the strength coaches. You got to like microdose now
Yeah.
the information in at times because a lot of individuals aren't willing to sit down for 45 minutes to an hour
Yeah.
doing a one-on-one assessment. Like if you
Yeah.
can give them 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, and then do that over the week, and then that adds up to an hour,
Yeah.
and they got something from it, they changed the behavior, they improved. You're still essentially doing your job, and they're still getting a benefit at the
Yeah, totally. And I think of like the in-person examples, like if you're kind of working on one thing with an athlete, like I think it's really cool to like, if you can kind of get their permission first, like, hey, next time you're at the fueling station, do you mind if I make a few suggestions? Like, I don't want to tell you what to do, or like some guys just, you know, may, believe it or
Some are
not, may
like
not want
whatever,
that.
just whatever
Yeah.
you say, I'll do it. Others like
Yeah.
you have to prompt and like almost ask them the
Uh,
question and then see how they respond, and then that kind of guides you on like what you can then do
yeah.
going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because we're all like, oh, we love nutrition. We want to talk about it all day, but there are plenty of people out there like, let's do minimal nutrition talk. Okay.
Yeah. Do you find as a practitioner, is the stress the same in the SEC versus the NFL, or are stressors different based on the levels? Because obviously there's
Yeah.
multiple levels of football, but I know typically
Yeah.
in the SEC,
The
or in the NFL,
pressure.
it all comes down to if
Yeah.
you're winning and losing a lot at the end of the time. But
Yeah.
how does that change for you as a practitioner
Gotta
transition?
win. Um, I think, and this may not be necessarily true for everyone because I know that the collegiate models are different. And the NFL models are slightly different, but I'd say as a whole more similar than the variety of collegiate models. But um, for sure in the SEC, there's a lot of obviously a lot of pressure to win. It can be really stressful. If you lose, and this what I'm about to say, like goes all experiences I've had, collegiate or professional, but it's like if you lose, the food all of a sudden doesn't taste as
Everything's
good, or
terrible.
yeah, or if you win, like we gotta eat that one thing again. Like there's some of those similarities. And I'll also add the caveat that I I have not worked in collegiate sports since the NIL stuff started, and I would imagine that's changed some of the experiences overall. And but all that to say, like I personally felt like I had a little more job security at the collegiate level because there was involvement with other sports, right? Like I think it's maybe not necessarily college to NFL thing, but maybe just like a position set up like here, football is what I'm doing. And so the football season itself is a lot more intense. It's a lot more exhausting than I've experienced in college. Not to say that, the collegiate wasn't a lot and hard, and you have more players that you're working with, so that adds a lot to your plate. But because the collegiate athletes have to go to class and there's time where they're just away or doing other things, you find breaks here and there, but then you might have other sports you're working with, so that kind of adds to your plate. So depending on what your position is like, you may or may not have some more job security at that level with other sports. But in the NFL, like, I mean, knock on wood, like we stay cohesive as a wellness department here. But I know that if the chances are probably higher that I wouldn't necessarily have anything to fall back on if like my boss got fired, for example, or something happened, the organization got wiped because we're not winning enough. I mean, we all know those things happen in the collegiate world. But so there's that, but I try not to operate on that. It just kind of can't help but be in the back of my mind. But yeah, I think the intensity of the season, I also didn't really completely know to expect. It's a lot. And it's
Constant
great. So I'm glad I
traveling,
enjoy
constant
it. Yeah.
packing, constant
Yeah.
scheduling, communicating. Like it don't.
Yeah.
Here's the next 5 to 6 months or more than
Hmm.
that, and we're gonna go now, and it's 7 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I know some of the NFL dietitians I work with pretty regular or talk to regularly, like they're prepping for trips abroad to go play a game. Like they're going to travel a full day to play and then come back the same day or next day or whatever. And the regular season before and after still goes on. So it's a whole lot uh for them, I know. Yeah. So it's like
Can you
good thing
speak
I
on
like
that
it.
point? It seems like the NFL is definitely trying to capture a lot of those different communities
Mhm.
overseas. I mean, I think I saw
Yeah.
something on social media the other day. They're looking
Yeah.
at Spain and Australia. I know they currently have
Oh,
stuff
no way.
for like Germany and
Hmm.
London, obviously pretty locked down.
Yeah.
How does that even work, like overseas? Like that's got to be a whole other like challenge. Do you go
Yeah.
over there ahead of time to figure that out, or what do you do?
Some do. I think if we do that, I'm going to beg and plead to get to go visit beforehand, not just to get to make the trip, which I do think would be cool because I love to travel, but like we know from a just hotel 4 hours away standpoint that if you're arriving with the team and you didn't get to vet it out beforehand, like that can be a really stressful time if you show up and things aren't right or as you expect. So I think it's important, especially on a trip like that. And a lot of the feedback I've gotten from other like league dietitians that have done this travel, it's like, going through customs with protein powder and supplements is not usually very successful. So you have to figure out how to get those over there. And, it depends on how long you're there. Like I know some teams have made it a really quick trip and some teams have been there longer. And I'm like, kind of joking, but kind of serious. Like if we were to go overseas and it was a really quick trip, I might just be like, you know what? We're probably not going to have protein powder for 24 hours. Like, I don't know how
We're
that would
gonna be
go over.
okay.
Yeah, it might not be acceptable, but then if you're there for a while and doing practices there, it's like you kind of need that stuff. So it is definitely a challenge, it sounds like. Yeah, and I think the league is just trying to really make it big around the world. So we'll see if people like that or not.
There's just so many logistics that go into play that unless you go over
Yeah.
there, unless you've been involved, like you just don't know. Like, and the last place I was at, there was an opportunity where we were, possibly going to go overseas to multiple different places. So like, I reached out to one of the dietitians
Mhm.
at the USOC because they consistently
Yeah, that's
travel
a great idea.
overseas to go to those events for the Olympics or whether it's the summer or whether it's obviously the Winter Olympics. I'm like, I'm just gonna ask them because y'all have done this several different times.
Yeah.
You have no clue, and I'm not gonna try to reinvent the wheel if I don't have to.
Yeah. That was smart. I wouldn't have even thought to do that. I need to, yeah. You are always like full of like the good ideas that get you ahead. Like I love that about you. Good
You
tip.
could add that one to your toolbox, and you could use that if you
Yeah,
ever have to go overseas.
seriously, I will. That's awesome.
If there's a dietitian that's aspiring to get to the NFL level, what do you feel are maybe some tips or some steps that
Mhm.
they should take? Like if they're in college, if they're starting to do internships, or like that's my
Mhm.
ultimate goal in the next 5 to 10 years is to get an opportunity to do that. Like what advice would you give to them?
Mhm. Similar to a lot of sports jobs, just like as cliche as it may sound in our world, getting your foot in the door is really important. So, networking at events, I think is a good start if you like don't know anybody in a league or any type of league that you're trying to get into or field. Um, and I've had people reach out and email like, can we set up a call, whatever. And it's not on purpose, but sometimes it's like they have to be really adamant because I just forget. I'll let it like slip. It's like not that it's not a priority. I love mentoring and teaching and talking to people, but it's like sometimes you just don't have the time in the day. So it's like for me, I know my style, some people don't love it, but if I get a professional, well-written email with a little bit about, nothing too long, but just a quick, here's something about me and here's how I would like to potentially help you or learn. Like I appreciate when people express eagerness to learn and help. And then that's professionalism is huge because um, it just shows like even if you can write, as again may sound cliche, but if you can write a professional email, then you have that at least part of that trait that probably is going to carry into other aspects. And then from there, trying to talk to people. And it is kind of, it's for those aspiring to get in. I remember when I was trying to get into sports and like find a full-time job, I would get so frustrated because I was like, there's these jobs out there and I think I would be great for it, and who knows, like
They're just
probably
judging
when
me
they
off my piece of paper. Like if you just have a
exactly.
conversation with me and give me a chance, like I can prove to you like
Yeah.
this is the value and the attitude and the passion like I can bring to the table.
Yeah, totally. And so you just have to keep trying, I think that, and if you have the passion, you'll keep trying and it's probably not going to work out every time, as we know, like things are just like so many times in any professional world, sports or not sports, decisions are made about people's employment that have nothing to do with them necessarily. So it's just hard not to it's hard to like really feel that, when you're the one trying to get the job, but keep trying. And I do think though that the level, like I keep using the word professionalism that comes up, like professionalism and eagerness to learn and willingness to be like, hey, like I'm here to help and learn and do a job. And um it can be tough in this environment because it can be exhausting, and it's like sometimes it's hard to like know the boundaries between, especially, and I'm not assuming, I know all entry level employees are not necessarily like similar age to the athletes, but I would say the percentage is higher that younger ages of people are breaking into the field. And in retrospect, looking back on my career, I just feel like it's just by nature of aging and all, it's a little easier to establish professionalism, as an as you get experience, and that's why it's called experience, I guess, right? But for younger individuals to be able to separate themselves on a level that says like, hey, I want to be really clear that I'm here to work and not necessarily to play. And this is cool, don't get me wrong, I think our jobs are so cool, but like it's like, you want to appreciate it and let people in the building know you appreciate it, but like make it clear that you're not here because you think it's cool.
Yeah, I'm not here for the name, the logo. It's like,
Mm.
are you here to work and make a difference for us? So then when you do get the chance to go to another place, like I can say like, yeah, like this person's a real deal. Or are
Yeah.
you there with your phone, like taking a picture, like by
Yeah.
the symbol, right? Like what level
Yeah.
of seriousness are you? Like what level are you trying to get out of this specific experience?
Yeah. No, that's totally true. And I think it always, and I might have a slightly old school mentality about that, but um it's just what's comfortable for me when I hire somebody is knowing that, they're always going to put the organization and our department first versus their personal interests. Um, so
You're one of 32 people in a country that has that job,
I
So
know
if
it's
you look at that
crazy.
at a big scale, like, and you look at any professional sports or you look at any high level sports in college, like you're amongst a very few individuals that have those positions. So you have to realistically think like if you do want to get that job in the future, you're going to have to be able to bring something to the table and bring value to the organization that's going to be at the level of all those other dietitians, or at that level that's going to contribute to make that 1% difference that you do with your player.
Yeah.
Not everybody's able to take on the stress and duties and all the things that kind of come with that. Like if you're able to accept
Yeah.
that, then maybe this is going to be the right fit for you.
Yeah, for sure. Because it is a lot and we all make sacrifices for our jobs. But there are a lot. And it's just like if it's worth it to you, you'll do it and you'll communicate to your partners and your families and the people in your lives, like you figure out the balance. But like that, when you were just saying that made me think like about a little, like I think about this story sometimes, like when I'm having a day, because I know we all have our days where I'm like, oh my gosh, like what the heck am I doing? Like I've been at work for 16 hours and I'm ready to go home. And thankfully that's not every day, but I think we all can kind of relate to
We've
that.
all
Like
been there.
yeah, I remember when I got this job, I was shocked, first of all, because I was like, well, I may as well try. And I was like, we'll see what happens. And little cheesy side note for me, like I remember getting on the plane and like pulling out my journal and being like in all caps, do not take this for granted. Like, do not stop working hard. Like, because I just was like pretty much in disbelief that I was able to be in one of these positions. And so I'm very extremely grateful, and I was like hugely humbled by the opportunity, and just hope I don't screw it up. I'm just kidding.
That's all we could ever hope.
Right. But it's really fun that I think these organizations do, and more organizations are starting to really value and see the need to have nutrition staff, and like kind of like we were talking offline earlier, like more than one, like you're seeing more of that. So I hope that we can continue to move in that direction.
Yep, and it just takes more of us to be able to show the value to these organizations to be able to do that, and we
Yeah.
chip away at it one day at a time.
Yeah, for sure.
Kate, awesome having you on. It was great to catch
Thank
up. Great
you.
to
It's
have
good to
a
talk
nice
to you too.
organic conversation. All of
Yeah.
her contact information will be below in the show notes, along with my Linktree link as well. So if you want to watch past episodes, those will all be there. We're almost at 50 episodes on the Roots
Wow.
podcast. We have all sorts of different practitioners on there. So go ahead and take a listen and stay tuned for more.
Yeah.
Appreciate it,
I'm
Kate.
so proud of you. Thank you. This is awesome.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
See
Bye.
you.